Scott Clendenin, Richard Zane, Ryan Browninger. Gentlemen, friends, colleagues, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Good day. Good morning.
It is going to be a good day. It's going to be a really good day.
Hopefully a good weekend.
So we had, as typical, the go hour was a little off the rails. So we're going to class up the joint with some real baseball talk this hour.
Y'all didn't do that in the first hour? Real baseball talk?
See, that's his way of trying to do a dig.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know.
I asked a genuine question.
Yeah, but I saw your face. See, I'm trying to class up the joint, and you're over here trying to derail, Bronathan.
Before we get to the real baseball talk, can I derail for a moment?
Of course.
I've got some things to say.
Yes, sir.
First off, I think the three of us sat here on opening day and said that we were tired of talking about last year, right? But I also think it's disingenuous to talk about this weekend without referencing what happened in June. I know you and Olin did that in the first segment earlier. So, so that's really the only time I'm going to acknowledge that. Second, kind of playing off my first point, is there's been like a groundswell of burner accounts and people who are hiding anonymously on Twitter talking about this company and thinking that we're some like magic hand behind the scenes that's preventing A&M from being successful. Obviously, that makes no sense. Playing off of that, one of the narratives I saw this week was that TexAgs didn't know Coach Schlossnagle was leaving A&M before it happened, which Ronnie, you, myself, everybody in the back knows that's hilariously false. Billy did a great job with that. I think there was no reason for us to report on that until it happened. When we found out, David Pierce was still the head baseball coach at Texas for at least a month and a half.
Yep.
So there was no job to report on. And the way we handled it, if we had reported on it at the end of April, think about the outside noise that would have derailed that team. And that was the greatest ride I think any A&M baseball team's ever gone on, correct? So would you have sacrificed the fun you had in June to know that the head coach was leaving a month and a half earlier? Would you have sacrificed that because you think you're entitled to the information? I think not. And then lastly, my parents have been asked if I'm going to Austin a lot. They want to know what I'm going to say to Coach Schlossnagle. Bronny and I are going to Austin, yes. Our job is to report on Texas A&M baseball the same way it was when it was Rob Childress versus Augie Garrido, or the same way it was when it was Jim Schlossnagle versus David Pierce. The media availabilities, if you're looking for us to get into any sort of interaction with him, you're going to be wildly disappointed because the media gaggles, the media press conferences are separated. Right, we're going to be on the third base side interviewing the Aggies, talking to Coach Earley and the players to find out why A&M won or lost. There should be no reason for us to interact with them. So if you're looking for some sort of incident, you're going to be disappointed. That's all I've got to say.
To kind of wrap it up and start the other dialogue, what I said in the first hour, and I think you guys agree with me, while I think about what happened in June and what has happened since, to me it's about let's win another series. At the end of the day, I mean, yes, I always want to beat Texas, and I always want to beat them 50-0 whenever possible, right? But it's about winning another series for this season and this team because there's a lot more baseball, I hope, ahead of bigger weekends than this one.
What I don't understand is, like, I do understand there's going to be a lot of emotional people walking into Dish Falk today and this weekend wearing maroon, understandably so. I hope that those emotional people aren't the players and the coaches. And based off our interactions with them this week, players and coaches, it doesn't seem to be that way. I think they all did a good job. I listened to the press conferences yesterday with Hensler, Prager, and Coach Earley, and did a great job of acknowledging they know the importance of the series. But for them, what's got their season back online and tried to help get themselves out of this hole is the way they've approached it, with a narrow focus and a single game mentality. So I understand the emotion of people walking into the ballpark, the fans from the A&M side. What I don't get is the reciprocated emotion outside of the rivalry. Like, what are Texas fans upset with A&M about? But I to be honest, I haven't seen too much of that. I would be nitpicking and kind of selectively taking tweets that I was mentioned in about that. But look, you knew it was going to happen, especially after Tuesday. Once both midweeks wrapped up and everybody's focus turned to this series, that the hype around it was probably going to exceed the importance of the actual games and what it means for Texas A&M. For the fans, it can't be that way for the players.
It's huge, right? Like, we know all the narratives and all the stuff that's come out since June makes this even bigger.
Yep.
The way A&M's been playing the last 3 weeks makes this weekend even bigger. The fact that Texas is ranked #1 makes this weekend even bigger. But A&M's found success on the road. They know that. They've beaten the number 1 team. They've beaten the top 2 team. They've got 2 series victories on the road in their last 2 trips. So they're rolling into Austin with some confidence, and they know that they've got to keep the main thing, control what they can control, and they're focused on doing that this weekend. I like what Bronny said. They seem extremely focused. It's a narrow focus. They're focused on themselves, and they're loose. They're still loose. They're not worried about what Texas is doing or anything like that. They've acknowledged the fact that somebody else is in the first base dugout at Disch Falk Field. They know him very well, but at the same time, it seems like they'd much rather be talking about Columbia and Penn than who their head coach used to be, and I like that about them.
Scotty?
I would be disingenuous if I said that following the regional in 1989, that it didn't piss me off when Cliff Guston asked on an open mic at Disch Falk Field, where are the Aggies now? Because they played the day after, and they were going to Omaha, and the Aggies weren't. But I had a professional relationship with him after I started in the media. I had a great relationship with Augie Garrido. I don't know that I'll have any kind of relationship going forward with the previous coach here at Texas A&M, but none of that matters. What I felt as a fan when I was a student, when years later, that was all gone. Mm-hmm. And at some point in time, this will all be gone. And it'll still be A&M versus Texas, but there won't be any of the carryover, that's going on since June for me and April for y'all. So the great thing is you have 2 teams that are playing great baseball. A&M is playing great baseball on the road in the SEC. Texas is playing great baseball at home in the SEC. And whereas I think this is going to be a preview of a super regional, if A&M plays well enough and continues to play well enough to make postseason play, this is just another year of A&M versus Texas. They're back in the conference again. They're going to play each other each year, and that's what I'm excited about, is these teams getting to play each other. And with something on the line always makes it better. And we're going to have that this week. A&M is playing at a level that Texas knows they're getting the best of the Aggies, and what it was like when they got on the plane leaving Nashville, that team doesn't exist anymore for A&M.
Scotty, you've been essentially the Aggie baseball historian. Is this the biggest regular season series between Texas A&M and Texas in the 102-year history? Biggest, most highly anticipated? How would you describe it?
Well, I would say that in 1989, it was that highly anticipated because Mark Johnson had not had success yet against Texas. And to lose the first game of that to Kirk Dressendorfer, when you're trying to break their record for the best start in the history of college baseball. That's what was on the line that Friday night at Olsen Field. 2 days later, you have the birth of Olsen Magic with John Byington. Then in 1993, when you're talking about that pitching staff of the Aggies, that team, and then you have Jeff Granger matched up against Brooks Kieschnick, that carried some weight there as well. In 99, there was a lot on the line in that series. All of that being said, this right here, it's as big as anyone. You're going to talk about 4 or 5 series in the history of this matchup. This is going to be in the top 5. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Well, and then considering what this felt like it was going to be maybe 5 weeks ago, right? It felt like A&M's season was ending. 3.5 weeks ago, how long ago? A month ago when they lost on Friday night to Tennessee, no hit Bronny, and it was just it felt like the end. Now you got the 2 hottest teams.
Yeah, and to credit the Longhorns, they've been playing at that level from the very get-go. Mm-hmm. And probably above their heads or above their perceived heads going into the season. But we know that that guy over there can coach the game. He can flat out coach the game. There's no question about it. In all my commentary about it, I've never made any bones about what kind of baseball coach he is. And he can coach. And his structure of his program, the structure of his practices are all really good. I have a hard time seeing A&M run away from Texas in any of these games because they are not going to beat themselves. They're going to throw strikes. They're going to play clean defense. They're going to take their walks, all that kind of stuff. You are going to have to go out there and beat them. And I think just the brand of baseball that they play, it's going to lend itself to close games. I think all these are going to bring your antacid, bring your heartburn medication because they're going to be back and forth affairs. But I mean, how is that dissimilar to any other series in this league?
Yeah.
When you walk into Nashville, you walk into Knoxville, you walk into Fayetteville, it's not much different, you know? So, A&M's gotten themselves off the map, no question about it. And one of my favorite things, we've already spent too much time talking about the previous head coach. I want to talk about this head coach. And I want to talk about that. I hope this head coach is here for 20 years as the head baseball coach at Texas A&M. And we've not talked enough about his consistency and message early on whenever he was coming on with us, David, on those Mondays. And sometimes he sounded down in the dumps. But the one word that kept coming up was belief.
Yep.
I believe that these guys are better players. I've seen them do it. I believe these guys are better. And we just got to keep going. And he came in here yesterday and talked about vitamins and medicine. You know, sometimes you got to change the medicine around because it's not working. The medicine you're taking is not working. So we got to change it around. And they've done that. He talked about their 2-strike plans and how they've worked on that over and over every Monday. It's something they've kind of implemented in part of their weekly practice routines. He's changed his formula. This team didn't come into the season the same team we thought it was going to be with the injuries, right? The offense, now it's getting to look more like what we thought. But in the meantime, what did we start seeing them do a few weeks ago? Run the bases and put the pedal down like crazy. Mm-hmm. You think that just happens because of the kids? Yeah, they take advantage of these kids' skill sets, but that's what a coach does. Look, there was a lot heaped on Mike Earley here, and the biggest endorsement that I think he's gotten this year is what Tony Vitello said after that series, where he said, look, when I got the Tennessee job, nobody cared about this place in baseball. So I got to screw a lot of stuff up with nobody watching. And on the flip side, Mike Earley, everybody's watching. Everybody's been watching. So, yeah, to expect him to come in and be a year 6 Tony Vitello or a year 18 Rob Childress, that's too much to ask. He's learning on the fly too. But guess what? Like, what have you seen out of his demeanor when he comes in here? What have we seen about how the kids are responding to that belief? Belief can be bloodied, it can be fractured, it can be punched in the mouth. But it's not real belief if it goes away.
Yep.
And these kids should be commended and the staff should be commended because that belief, even though it was fractured and bloodied, never left.
Richard, he sat in this studio where Bronny's sitting, and there was a confidence in his demeanor, right? You went to the press conference, and it's not cocky. It's more like, we know what we're working with.
Well, I mean, he's starting to win. Everything that Bronninger has said, right? If you can believe, but if you don't have the results, you know, it's easy for other people to quit believing. It's easy for other people to quit. To Mike's credit, and to the credit of the coaching staff, and to the credit of the kids, and he said it over and over and over. You know, you're not going to see anybody quit. You're not going to see anybody quit. They haven't. And they found a way to win some ball games, in very exciting fashion, and now they finally got the confidence, and they're playing loosely, and you can see it on the coach's demeanor, and you can see it in the demeanor of the players, and they just need to keep it rolling. Just got to keep it rolling, Scotty.
Well, I think that, and this is any coach in any program, you have to be yourself. If you're always yourself and you don't try to change, if you try to change ships in midstream, you're going to run into problems. So if you're a guy that has always called plays, then why are you stopping calling plays? If you are a guy, why would you give that up for another sport? If you are a positive guy that talks about things are going to work out in your favor, if all of a sudden you turn into a huge negative guy, I don't think that helps your message. You have to be who your message is. And if you're who your message is all the time, then you're genuine. And if you're genuine, your players gather that from you. So when they tell you that, I believe that you're going to hit because you've always been genuine with you, Coach really believes that. He's not making this up because we're in a hitting slump.
Well, I do think there's something to be said that this is the first time he's been a head coach of any team ever.
Yes.
Any team ever. And people kind of, it's funny because the criticism of Bucky McMillan was like, oh, he's a high school head coach, and then he was a mid-major head coach. I'm sitting there going, yeah, but he's been a head coach. Michael Earley didn't know, like, he was trying to be himself, but he didn't know what himself was as a head coach. All of that starts to formulate itself the more you go through it and the more adversity that you have, where he's never had to manage an entire roster of 40 guys. He's had to just manage hitters. So now you got to learn how to talk to the pitchers. And the way I talk to Ryan Prager is a different way that I talk to Caden Wilson. And Then I'd start bringing in guys out of the transfer portal and true freshmen that I helped recruit, but not on the mound. How do I talk to Caden McCoy? How do I talk to Gavin Lyons? Caleb Longley was the connection there. So there's so many odds and ends that you can never fully prepare for before a season starts that I think, look, and I've talked to Coach Earley about it. When he would come on here early, when they were going through those doldrums, David, and he came in here and did some of these interviews or did them on the phone, he sounded beat. He did.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know that about himself yet. And it's a credit to him that he goes, okay, I don't have this all figured out. How can I improve each and every area? Not just my team. That's the number one goal, is to coach my team and get them better. But being the head coach of a program like this, there's part of a show that goes on. Being the head coach of a 12U team in travel baseball, there should be a little bit of a show that goes on, that no parent in the stands could look at your practices and go, well, I could do that. And no parent or fan in the stands could look at you in game and go, well, I could do that. Like, there's part of this gravitas, this show that you have to put on. And he's learning that, where his confidence can never be wavering.
Yep.
Because the kids see that.
He has to be himself.
Right. And so he's learning what himself is right now and what he's going to be as a head coach, hopefully at Texas A&M for a long time. That person is being molded right now.
I want to hit one more thing about the emotions of this series before we move on and go to the next segment. Scott, does anybody have the advantage here? Because Schloss knows these players, okay? These players have been in this spotlight before. Conversely, Michael Earley knows what they're doing. Not the players per se, but that staff he knows it well. So does anybody have an advantage when it comes to the emotions of this series?
Not to the emotions, and probably not to the knowledge. You change and you evolve all the time as players. And it's not like a whole bunch of players ended up in Austin that they coached together, okay? They stayed in College Station. So, yes, Texas is going to know more about A&M's players that they coached, all right? But they're not going to know any special formula to beat those guys. They're not going to know that there's a pitch that Jace Lavalette cannot hit. Well, if there's a pitch that Jace Lavalette could not hit, I haven't seen anybody throw it consistently at him. So they're not going to know what the kryptonite for Sorrell is and what the kryptonite for Hayden Schott is. So it is still up to this team to not play the guy in the dugout and play the 9 guys on the field. And I think that is what this team has already shown, because they didn't play what was in the dugout against Tennessee. They didn't play against the stands in Arkansas, which is just as tough a place to play as it is to go to Austin. They played baseball against the guys on the field. And that is the true measure that this team has done, is they have focused in and not let the outside and not let who they were playing affect who they were playing on the field.
Even the outside noise when they were losing games, they haven't let it affect them. And that's one thing I wrote this week, was that this A&M team should, at this point, be used to dealing with hype and how to digest it and then how to get it out. And because internally they felt pressure, externally they felt pressure. Back in late February, early mid-March, all the way through that Vanderbilt series, they felt that, and they've dealt with it, and they swallowed it, and they put it behind them. So I think my inclination is all this stuff that's going on around them this week, they're like, we've dealt with worse.
Yeah,
we've dealt with worse already this season.
0-6 and going to Tennessee is a lot worse. I mean, 1-8 and going to Tennessee is a lot worse than where you have to go to Austin from.
If you're worried about one coaching staff knowing more about one club than the other, where was Caleb Longley last year?
He was the
right?
Yeah.
And also, Mike even addressed it, I believe it was with us or maybe in his press conference yesterday. He knows exactly the style of baseball that Texas coaching staff wants to play. They can prepare for that. So scouting reports are going to even themselves out, and it's going to be up to the players. And as far as emotion goes, I don't think one team has the advantage over the other when it comes to emotion, because it's up to you to manage the emotion. It's up to each individual guy to manage the emotion, and the team that does that the best collectively is going to be the team that's going to have the advantage when it comes to emotion.